Hey, this is Paul from the Tech Geeks. In this video, just going to really walk through setting up TP-Link Omada, the software from the beginning. I'm actually going to do this because I want to set up two EAP215 bridge pairs that will go on probably in this video and show you actually how to get those configured as well, and probably set them in a multi-bridge, which might not be relevant for you, but maybe the first part of this video could help you as well if you've not installed the software before. But the same process, if you're adding access points or switches later on, are there as well. So what is the Omada controller software? We have a number of options to control and manage the TP-Link Omada range. You can buy a little controller called the OC200 and the OC300. Those are good starting ones. There's actually an appliance that runs on your network, which is useful if you are not going to keep the same computer or you're not going to take regular backups. If you want to install the software, which is what we're going to do today, I'm actually installing this on a server so it can run permanently. You just have to remember that if you want to make configuration changes, that the software needs to be running and that computer needs to be in the same network. So running a controller sometimes is a little bit better, or a piece of hardware there. So all we're going to do is we're just going to walk through the process. I've already downloaded the software, so you can go to TP-Link's website and download the controller software. Version 5 is the current, most recent version in what we're installing here. And so hopefully I've already installed this. Here you go, 5.13 is the latest one, and we can see the software in there. I'm just going to extract all of this somewhere that I can actually find it. Once that's extracted, we're going to run the install wizard. Now listen, if you've got a firewall installed on your computer, one of the most common things is that will block some of the connections working. Why? We think that the controller talks to the access points and the switches. It's actually the other way around. The access points and switches, when they start up, go, "Hey, I'm here. Is there a controller around?" And the controller, if it's around, will respond. Obviously, if you've got a firewall on your local machine, it will probably block the listening of those ports. So if that's one of the common things, if you have to be on the same physical network as the devices you're setting up, and often it's worthwhile having the firewall turned off. Now I'm on a Windows, I can't remember, Windows 10, Windows 11 machine here. All right, so it's not a trusted installer. So you just need to click on more info and choose run anyway. All right, to actually get this application trusted and installed. This is going to go through, put the software there, and then we can go through the basic configuration of setting up our sites, any of our wireless network names that we might want, and then we can add our devices in, but I will run you through those basics as we get there. Alright, so let's just let this through. I'm just installing it in the default areas. If you want to install it somewhere else, that's totally up to you, but I like to just leave it as it is as needed. So we can see that it has basically created as a shortcut here, and that will run, or can be set to run each time your computer starts, but it is a manual process. It's now going to go through the starting up of the application. And we can close these couple of windows down in the background not to confuse ourselves. Alright, so we have an issue here that port 8843 is actually already in use. And that means it's being used by something else, because I happen to have a unified controller on here as well. So as a result of this, I'm actually going to need to change this to run on a slightly different port. So we're going to need to make some configuration changes in the applications file and config to actually make that work. So let me just see whether we can find where it's installed it. If this was the place that it put it, I really can't remember because I wasn't paying a lot of attention at that moment in time when it did it. So just give me a moment to locate where we installed everything and the file that I need, and I'll walk you through to that bit. Okay, so after a little bit of work, I was able to just work out, because I wasn't paying attention, as you would have seen, when it was actually downloading this, actually put it into users, into my current user, and into here and in properties. and we can then right click and choose open with, open this with WordPad, and we can actually see the different port numbers that we can run this as. So I'm actually just going to make this a little bit easier. I'm just going to elevate these all to a completely different port number, so you could have other applications running on your computer, and this is another reason why a piece of hardware can often be a better solution for you. Alright, so that should all be set correctly now, so we can exit that and it will want us to save it. And let's just try and see if we can start the Omada controller again. I'll be interested to see whether it will fully start this time. I'm hoping that it will do. We've moved those ports on so that they're causing us less of a problem. It will probably take 2 or 3 minutes to start, and I will come back once I can see that this is started and we can carry on to the next stage. Okay, so it took 2 or 3 minutes for that to actually fully start up, and now we get to this screen. This is not a screen. A lot of people get worried at this point. This is just standard. Alright, we have a non-officially signed SSL certificate. This is just warning us. You're on a local network, nobody's got inside that to hack it, it's your controller. So it's safe to hit hide advanced, or not advanced, click on advanced depending on which web browser you're using, and then continue to safe host. And this should now start us to walk through the basics of setting this up for the first time. So we'll set this up as an example. Alright, we can set whatever passwords you would actually like to use in this scenario. So let me just grab a couple of passwords we can put in here. Alright, so let's put the passwords in here. Now, this is a key part. If you've already been and created yourself an account, I think it's at omada.tplink.com, then this will, if we then link this to the cloud access, this will make it much better for us, because it means that we can actually log into TP-Link's website, and then wherever we are in the world, it will be able to make a connection back to our local controller, and we can manage it remotely. So I would suggest that you probably link this up and go and create yourself an account to start with as well. So hopefully I've got everything right, that I can let that log in and bind, and that's bound. Alright, so we can then move on to the next page. So we could restore from a backup if you've got one already. This is a new one, so we're setting this up as a new one. Alright, and we will call this Spinel, which is part of the location where we are, which is fine. What's our time zone? We're in Brisbane. Oh, don't know whether it will allow us to do that. No. So we need to do Australia, or is it going to just allow us to scroll back down? Alright, so we're on Brisbane time. There we go, Brisbane time. Do you want to have notifications? Yes, that's up to you. Do you want to be user experience? Again, those are your choices. So you want to give this a name if you want. For your first site. What's a site? A site is where we're going to have our config for our access points, things like our network name, our SSID, depending on if you've got the router or not, where you're going to have your IP allocation and everything else. The great thing is in this controller you can have multiple sites, so maybe you have one for an attached house or your mum and dad's or somewhere else like that. You can add all of these in here and manage them as long as they can be seen over the network or the same network. So quite a nice way of doing this. So we're just going to create a test one on here just to make it super easy. And then you can have individual users that can log into that one. So let's just call this the Tech Geeks. Alright, and the Tech Geeks is the password. Something like that as a nice and easy so I can remember it. This is more just a scenario thing. It's up to you what you want this to do. I'll choose Office, but it's just more, it will guide you through some of the basic setups that may be more geared to that, or you can create your own one if you want to. Alright, so we are already through. I'm not going to configure any devices at this stage. I'd like to get all the way through to get this finished and done. All right, WAN settings. We don't have this connected to a device that's a gateway. If you have a gateway device, then you'll want to configure these bits so that when it's enabled, it will then pull all of those settings in and know how to connect to the internet. But we've just got this as a standalone device. This is what we do want for this site. This is our SSID, so we'll just call this the Tech Geeks again, but this can be your own network name. All right, and if you wanted to already set up guest Wi-Fi, then you can add that in if you want. But these are the basics really to get the controller set up and running. So here's all of the summary. We're just going to hit finish. This is going to go through and actually now allow us to log in. So all being well, all right, our password and everything we set up, we also linked it with our TP-Link login details, so that made things a little bit easier for us as well. All right, so it wants to just remind us about a few things that we can walk through, and the control panel. Control panel is very similar to another vendor that sells wireless in this market space. So I'm just letting it just go through those steps. Not really anything there that I probably want to look at. But here we are. This is our setup. This is our controller. All right, and inside our controller, when we go in there, we can configure it and we can start adding devices if we want to. We've got multiple sites, and it's just giving us a rundown of what we've got across this. Because you might have a controller in an office and might have a number of connected offices, and as a result, they can see this one controller. You might need to put some port forwarding in to make some of those bits and pieces work. But that's the basics of what's there. So let's just run through our settings. All right, so that we know that we've got everything set up. A few things that I like in here that are maybe more useful than a few other vendors that are around there. You can bring in, you can go and buy yourself an instant SSL certificate for $30 or whatever and add this in, really super and easy. And then this becomes a secured site. You're going to need to have what's called a FQDN, a fully qualified domain name. So it might be Omada, a domain name that you own or something to make it useful with a SSL certificate. And then you obviously wouldn't end up having this red mark all of the time. The controller settings, this is where do you want to do daylight saving? I want this in to be 24 hours. Do you like the dark settings? Show you about pending devices. And all of those sort of things. Do I want certain logging enabled, client history? I'm happy to record some of that information. It's probably fairly useful, and this is how to retain it all. So that's really what's going on in there. None of this you have to do. This is probably I don't really want to disable that. I'll skip this update notification for a minute. You don't have to go through all of these, but it is probably useful if you want to get alerts from this. Obviously, it's only going to be useful if you're going to have this software running all of the time. If you're just going to use this as configuration, once the devices are adopted and part of it, the config sits on those devices, and you don't need to run this software, but you do need to run it every time you want to make changes. If you want to run it permanently and you want to enable a server, an SMTP server in there, maybe you've got Office 365, that's going to be port 587 in there. You're going to enable SSL and authentication and be smtp.office.com or whatever it is there, and use your username and password details, and you should be able to then send email out so it can send you alerts and password resets. Turn on two-factor authentication if you want. Integrate it with a few other apps. I'm not worried about showing you those bits at this moment in time. Restore from a backup and take backups. Auto backup is useful. How often do you want to have the backup taken? I would suggest maybe once a week. It's going to keep it there on your local machine for you, and you can then come back and collect these, or you can have them saved to a different location if you want to. Migration is there if you want to move this to a different server. Options to export the data, and your cloud access, so if you no longer want this to be managed. So in some instances you might have a controller, and this is very, very similar to doing it on the hardware device. Maybe you're no longer managing it for a client. You can unlink your TP-Link connection from it. All right, so those really are our key ones. Now in here we have a local user, the Tech Geeks, that we set up, and we have our cloud user. What you can do is you can invite other users to this, and you just click the dot and choose cloud user. If they've already got a TP-Link account, all right, then you can just invite them with that TP-Link account settings and whatever you want them to have responsibility for, and then they can also remotely access this as well. So it's quite a nice way of being able to add users into it. Now, you can control this in many different ways, and there are options for this. I won't run into this too many times, but once we go out of our global view and go into something like Spinel, which is our site, we could have multiple sites, and you can then do the similar types of things in here that are different for each one of those sites. So if you're able to centrally manage a few sites in different time zones, you can change that. You can change a lot of the other settings within inside here, but you will have created a site anyway. So you will at least want to go through some of the basics to get your site as you need it to. I generally suggest you do this probably before you add any devices. It will make life easier. So up in this organization, we chose Spinel, which was our site. We can allow it to update time automatically if we want to. We've got the scenario here. You can have the LEDs on the access points turned off if you want. Do you want to enable advanced features? This probably don't need at this stage, but you might use if you want to get somewhere a little bit further on and control and manage things at a little bit more advanced level. Your wired networks, this is where you're obviously going to set up stuff for your, if you've got an Edge, an ER605, or some of the newer models that are in here, the wireless ones, you can set up all of their internet connections. So we can choose this, how does it pick up its IP address, so that it's all configured within inside here. So that's what we would do inside our WAN mode. And then in, oh, it's going to take us to the wrong menu, there we go, look at that. What we can then do in our LAN mode is going to really talk about here, what do we have in DHCP. Now, if there's no router in place, this is not going to have any control over the IP addresses because it's not a DHCP server. So as much as all of these settings are in here, nothing's actually happening. This is only relevant if you have a TP-Link Omada router connected in here and some of the other devices to make it work. Initially, really, all I'm interested in doing is setting this up as a wireless network. All right, and we can see my wireless network I've created in here as we walked it through. So probably I would want to think WPA personal is fine as a security setting. Do I want to enable all of those frequencies? Well, if I've got access points that support them, then that's really great. I can hide the beacons, so I can create multiple SSIDs if I want to and hide those beacons. It's giving me an option here of which WPA option do I want, and it's giving me 2 and 3, which is a good. Do I want PMF? This is just an extra security portion that came in WPA 3. Maybe relevant, maybe not relevant for you. Some of these are customizable settings that you may want to do. Scheduling, for instance, you can set it if this is at home, that you can set up a time range, so you maybe want to turn the wireless off at night time, or you can apply this to specific access points if you want to, maybe in your kids' bedrooms or somewhere like that. And we've got options to filter out devices by their MAC address or rate limit, and a few other settings in there that might make that useful for you to be able to tune a little further. Some of these are only relevant, again, if you've got the right security device. All of this network security stuff is around you having an edge router. Sorry, not an edge router. Yeah, a router on the edge. So that might be your ER650 or 7206 or whatever the models are currently called. All right, so that's what your next network security whole piece is about. And then you've got a whole load of things, again, still in routing, in transmission. VPNs as an option there for you, for people to be VPN into this box, and you create site-to-site VPNs as well. And then your profiles in here, how you want to control some of the bits and pieces if you want to, for time ranges, authentication. All right, if you want to do specific other authentication for users getting onto the network or the network ports. And then your services in here, and you can see them all way running across the top. So there's a lot of functionality in here of which I don't really need to show you all of this because it's not really relevant, but this is really where we needed to get to. This is the controller software installed and actually running. We've created a site and we've currently created a wireless network, which is what I needed to be able to get to. Our dashboard will show us what is actually going on in here. And then later on, if you have devices, this is where we're going to go from here in a moment when I turn the devices on and get them onto the network, where we're going to adopt these into the network. This might be a network switch. As we said, it might be one of the routers, and it might also be a wireless bridge, which is what I'm working on, some wireless access points. And then really down this side here, we'll be able to see other information about clients. Once wireless users connect to it, see what speed they've got. We can do rate limiting and a whole bunch of other stuff. But again, that was probably more than what was needed in this video. The video was trying to get you to this stage. Remember, the key things are conflicting with other applications you may already have it running. Then also thinking about your firewall. If your firewall is on, that is potentially going to restrict the access points or the things you're going to configure, trying to be able to see them. So hopefully that's given you a jump off point. I'm actually going to carry this video on and configure the EAP215s in a bridge and walk you through that stage. But at least this first part shows you how to get the software installed if you're not doing this on the hardware controller. All right, so I'm just going to quickly go and plug my EAP215s in and let's see whether we can get to the next stage. Okay, so I've been over and I've literally just plugged my first one of my EAP215s in. What are they? They're a bridge kit pair. They're already paired together. So I've got one plugged into the Ethernet port that's in my same LAN segment. I've just done a network scan to just find them here, but I didn't need to do that. I just wanted to know something was actually happening. And after about 2 or 3 minutes when it booted, because everything is in the same IP range, it appears in the list. So if you've come into this, we've come into our site, and then we've come into devices. This doesn't matter whether it was a switch, the router, or an access point. Everything new, as long as you're on the same network segment, it will there appear ready to go. So we actually can see the other bridge pair has actually come online now as well, or the other one of the pair. And these are in this state of called pending, all right, and we now need to essentially adopt these into the system so that they are now actually pick up the config and we can do something with it. So we can click on the word pending, all right, we can see the device that we've got and its uptime, and I'm just going to choose adopt now. All right, this is actually going to now add it to our controller. It's going to pass all the settings of this controller that we've set up, things like our SSID, all our time principles, all of those type of things are now actually going to be pushed to this device. And this device is now becoming managed. If I was to install this software again, for instance, because maybe I've lost my computer, I've changed it or whatever, and the first time I do this I'll find lots of these and they may already said adopted by another device. That means they're already linked to another controller, and the only way to get around that is actually to factory default them and to reset them. Alright, so this one here is pending as well. Alright, so it doesn't give me the option here to adopt it because it already says up here that it's adopting. So I think because we have initiated, because this is a bridge pair, there we go. They've both been connected and they are both picking up the config together. So we can let these run through now. And once they've finished running through and connected, basically they are part of the system and they will actually start broadcasting whatever we've set up, because this is a bridge pair. What does that mean? If you followed so far and you're not quite sure, a bridge pair, we're joining two buildings together where we can't put an Ethernet cable. So one of these is going on the outside of my first building, cabled all the way back to my internet provider as router. And then on the other building, we're putting another one of these pointing back to this. And they create what we call a wireless bridge. The advantage of these EAP215s is they actually create a wireless access point at that location as well. So now we've got two outdoor access points and we've got a bridge to join them together. This setup, when I'm going to do it, I'm probably going to add some cameras to it later on so I can join my camera network together. So I've got options to be able to reboot them. I can locate it by flashing its light, or I can actually change the name. Now I'm going to change the names of some of this and see whether we can tidy this up a little bit here. All right, so we can see what IP addresses have been picked up. We can see whether it's got a LAN connection and what speed it's going. We can see here if it had a wireless uplink, or this is an uplink and it shows it's wired. All right, and it shows its data, the transfer, and what speed it negotiated. And it's showing what radios are running. Clients, we don't have anything connected. Is it meshed together? Well, essentially it is meshed together with this other device over here. All right, and I'm actually going to add a third one hopefully in a moment if I can make this work. All right, so in our config, what are we going to call this? So I'm going to call this AP1, all right, house, just because that's what I would want. That's what I want to do because this is going to go on the outside of a house. All right, and the two are going to go on different buildings on the way of it. Device tags, I can give it different tags. I can give it some address information if I really want all of those bits and pieces. But I just want to be able to identify it in the list a little bit more. You can turn the lights off on it if you want to as well. All right, this is going to give you an idea of whatever things are around it if you need to find it as an optimize, because there might be other channels that are running. All right, so right now I actually have a connection. If I was to add an Ethernet cable into this second one over here, I actually already have now a connection to that building. All right, I've got Ethernet out, I've got wireless there as well. So pretty cool, and that was just how simple it was to actually get going. So I'm going to put this as AP2, and I'm going to put this as middle shed. I'm going to put this as small shed. All right, so I've applied that setting now. So those two are bridged together. We've got a pretty good speed, hopefully, between the two of them. This, actually, the mesh here, it shows obviously actually how close they are together. I don't know whether it actually gives us an idea. It's using 4 channels, and I'm just wondering whether it actually shows us any more statistics of what it's managed to do. There we go. We can actually see that this is connected at 800 megasecond between each device. So we're not going to get that because wireless is half duplex, so probably only going to get 300 megasecond on the speed. But remember, these devices can go up to 3 or 4 kilometers, maybe a little bit more. So that speed will drop, but it shows that it's actually working really well. Now, I'm going to go and try something which I've not done before, which is I want to actually add a third one. So this house is the primary. I've got a small shed and a large shed, and I want to join them together. Remember, this is the only one that's wired. All right, so I'm just going to quickly go away and connect a third device up. All I'm doing is powering it with PoE. Which comes in the box, and I'm hoping that it will then appear in here very shortly, and we'll be able to add it to this mesh, and we'll end up with what's called a point-to-point, a point-to-multipoint. All right, so I'll be back in a moment once I've just plugged that other one in. All right, so quite amazing. All I have just done is literally gone and Googled a few times there just to be sure I got this actually right, and I just need to be a bit more patient. It took about 3 minutes, so I've plugged in a third one of the EAP215s, actually, that was already joined to another one and another pair, and I thought maybe I was going to have to factory default it, but I didn't. So all that's now happened is that's come online. So I should just be able to now choose adopt, and this should now choose which one I want it to be connected to. Which is the most logical one because it's the only one that it can be. You could potentially have had 2 or 3 bases and then just hop those through it. So this is asking which one do I want it to be connected to. So I had to do no factory defaulting. I just needed to bring it in line with the Omada controller, and hey, there it was. So like a super easy thing to do. So we're just going to let this go through and adopt, and then we'll actually rename this so that it follows my pattern. And I think that that is pretty much all I needed to get to. And this would have been the same if it was a switch. And once you've adopted it, then all the config is managed from your settings, all right? Down here, your Wi-Fi networks, your wired networks, all happens from that place. So like super easy to actually do. And then you can, the devices pick up that config that you have created and start pushing it out. So I'm presuming this might take a little while longer because they're not actually normally paired together. But let's just see. I'm presuming in a couple of moments, hopefully it will show as connected. And we'll actually be able to see what's going. Yeah, we're hitting provisioning. So I'm just going to go up here and put AP3 large shed. All right, and that's all I wanted to do on this one. And we've got lots of advanced settings, obviously, that you can do down here if you want to. And if you want to then give this device back or out of the network, you can forget the device as well here. All right, and that will allow you to then basically return it to factory defaults when it reboots. So we now have what's called a point to multipoint. So we have one source. Probably allow yourself 30 or 40 degrees of definition. All right, and that is all that is needed for my house. Along I got clear line of sight, and they're within about 30 degrees of each other or so. I've now been able to connect two other buildings together super easily and managed using this software. If I was probably doing this in a house, I'd probably buy the OC200 for it's not a lot of money, and it means I don't have to rely on the software all of the time. But we were doing this so it was set up and permanently running anyway. So hopefully that's been a bit of a guide through all the way from setting this up to adding this in. Like I said, the same. I've done it with bridges, but you could have done it with switches. Hopefully it's been useful if you were looking at how to configure the wireless bridges there. It gave you something as a starting point as well. Head on to our YouTube channel. We've got loads more help documents or help videos on everything TP-Link. And we're always uploading more, so subscribe and stay up to date.